Yeah, so we are Vue Storefront, currently the biggest open source PWA framework out there. We started out with integration with Magento, and currently we are expanding the integration to other e-commerce platforms, Shopware, Commerce Tools, Salesforce, About You Cloud, and later on the roadmap, we also have Shopify and WooCommerce that can satisfy the smaller merchants.
Great. So to dive right in and start with the basics, what are progressive web apps or PWAs?
So Progressive Web App was initiated, I would say, by Steve Jobs and his team at Apple quite some time ago. And I think at some point they realized that progressive web apps can be so good that the whole business model connected with the App Store could go downside because no one would have to upload those applications over there or download. The maintenance is cheaper and so on. So they resigned to it. And afterwards, Alex Russell from Google reactivated this in 2015, and we could see the first sites going up. I think a good example is Flipkart from the e-commerce, AliExpress, Alibaba. So huge companies from the e-commerce industry integrated those and created the PWA to make the user much better on web. And also, probably not many people know that, for example, all of you are using Twitter. Twitter also has a Twitter Lite version, so you can get the Twitter PWA. Tinder has a PWA as well. And the term itself, it means progressive web application. So as you have in the name, this is a web application that you can progressively develop. So you can start with smaller pieces and you can start adding additional features as you go on. So this is quite great. And the whole idea and why Google is pushing it so far is improving the user experience on web. So far, this great mobile experience was mainly possible through native applications, and those are quite expensive to develop. People have to download this, they have to go and make an update. And with progressive web apps, you basically use it the second you enter the website. So you do not have to download anything. Of course, you can add it to your home screen and have it started as a standard native application. But the best thing about this is that you are using it right away when you enter the website. So for me, that means it's a good technology, mainly because the users shouldn't even think, okay, is it PWA? Am I using PWA? Okay, I'm using PWA, so this website is great. No, they should just have a great experience browsing your website. For the e-commerce, it should be great experience buying something from your website. And I think this is crucial here, that people are using it without even knowing that.
That was a great overview, and you touched on a little bit, but user experience is huge. I mean, this is a huge way to be able to enhance it. And I'd love to hear some examples about how you can use the PWAs to do that.
Yeah, so the user experience, as you mentioned, is extremely important those days. And very often the user experience is leading into better conversions. And the user experience is combined of a few things. So one thing is the UI of the website. Second one would be how reliable it is. So can I browse it fast enough? Does it crash for me? And so on. And the last one is the ease of using it. So everything combined together, meaning that the users are not getting lost. It's easy for them to find the information and find the product they are interested in, and in the same time make a checkout in an easy way. So I would say that's important. And the PWA is basically connecting the best of native apps and the best of the web, because in the native kind of way, you have this possibility to really adjust your design and have it very mobile specific. And right now, PWA can do the same thing, right? So in PWAs, and this is what we have, for example, in our standard template. So if I press it on chat, I think people should be able to see this, right? So if you guys would go to Capybara Storefront Cloud.io, And then you can do the inspect element and go into mobile view, see the website as iPhone X or iPhone 8. You can see that in the web way, you will see a standard web design as it is on the laptop or computer. When you do it for the mobile view, automatically everything is changing around. So the navigation bar is moving to the bottom. The buttons are very similar on what you would normally expect from the native application. So when I'm showing this kind of stuff to my friends, like they might not know what I'm doing, what is PWA, they are not from the tech or e-commerce world. And I'm like, look, this is basically what we do. Like you go on the website from your mobile and this is how it looks. And they're like, yeah, but it's just a native application. I'm like, no, like you didn't download anything. Look at the top, there is a URL. So that means you are on mobile web and your experience suddenly becomes much, much better. So even in our standard template that is available to everyone. So if you want to start your e-commerce shop and put it on top of Magento or Commerce or anything else, this is what we give you as a starting point. This was created based on the UX playbook from Google. I highly recommend everyone to read this. It's 108 pages, but a lot of those pages are basically the images of different kind of setups, how the good site should look like, what has impact on conversion rates, how you should build user experience to make sure that your users are happy and they are coming back to your site. The more time they are coming back, the more loyal they become. They start spending more money each time they visit your site. So this is all connected to the UI and the user experience itself, and we're trying to make sure that overall experience, even by using the standard template, it's pretty high level.
Definitely. And thank you so much for sharing those links. For people who are watching this, I recommend copying and pasting those in your notes so that way you can click and look at them in more detail beyond today. And you touched on native app a little bit. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the benefits of PWAs versus native app. So why would you want to go that route versus native app, especially when, like you touched on, some people can't tell the difference of when something's being used versus another?
Yeah, so as a background, I've been working in the native app industry before I moved in for web for like 7-8 years. And if you like drinking wine, and especially if you are from States, you probably know an app called Vivino. Currently, it's the biggest wine app scanning in the world with like 50 billion scans already. And basically, if any of you had any experience with app development before, and if any of you tried to upload, you feel like it's a ready native app for iOS, for example, upload this to the App Store, you wait for review, this process can take up to 3 weeks. So imagine you're working on something, you really want to release it, you really want your users to start using it, and then Apple is like, wait, let's make them wait. Let's make this process very long. In another way, it's very expensive. So in the past and even now, with a lot of different languages like Flutter, Xamarin, so all those hybrid apps, it's quite expensive because you always need to have a web presence. It's very unlikely that you as an e-commerce company will only be based on native world, right? If you are not in the web, if someone is going to type, hey, like a woman wants to buy a red dress, she's going to type red dress on Google. There is no way she will end up browsing red dresses inside some native application. It first has to be indexed by Google. So by using PWA, those products are indexed, right? And when users are ending up on your site from search, very often they are the first-time users. So before you will manage to convert them into downloading an application, because let's say you are AliExpress, Alibaba, Zalando, Amazon, right? All those giants, they should have an app because they have a lot of returning customers. But if you're a smaller merchant and you want to have a native app as well, before you manage anyone to download this and convince them to do it, you have to make sure that the web experience is much better. So I think at this point, it's for me crucial. If anyone has any web presence, their website should be PWA, and only in the next step consider native apps, because it's then 3 different platforms to maintain. You have your web, and then you have Android, and then you have iOS apps. So 3 different platforms. In case of PWA, you only have web, and this web will convert most of your users, third-time users, before they download an app.
Now, for people who are looking to make that transition there, what kind of team would they need to have to be able to make that possible? Or does it make more sense to outsource if they're starting from scratch?
Yeah, so as for Vue Storefront, we have approximately 70 partners right now, and Trellis is one of our top partners in the US. So they are also working on that. As for the PWA itself, Vue Storefront is written in Vue.js, so that's JavaScript. If someone has any experience with React.js or AngularJS, learning Vue is very easy. And I would say that since Angular and React are more used to create quite complex applications, also regarding the backend and frontend connections, the Vue.js is a very light version of those. They learned a lot. It has amazing community, and the popularity is growing super fast. So I would say our peak like 2.5 years ago to go with Vue.js was quite risky, because all of our competition, even PWA Studio is based on React. But now we see a lot of developers, and that might be one of the key factors in having such a big community, almost 7,000 stars on GitHub, to basically have Vue.js as a technology. So you can have developers in-house that know any kind of JavaScript. The best is if they know Vue.js. And then, of course, depending on what platform are you using, if you know Magento, you should have the developers that know Magento as well to maintain the backend.
Definitely, to kind of help people to kind of start where you already are and then make that transition that much smoother. I'd love to get a little bit more technical with you. So can you share some best practices with UI ergonomics?
Yeah, so maybe I will also share this one. So for any of you, it was actually a side project, but the side project called Storefront UI is also getting quite popular. It's a open source as well. It's a set of Vue.js UI components that can be used to create a very good experiences. And in this kind of scenario, you have different designers, different developers setting up their own components and putting it out there. So when you do the design of the site, you can use those pre-made components and use the code to make this process faster. And also, I highly recommend to use our standard template as a starting point, because it's already setting up a certain guidelines.
Now, for anyone who is still thinking about like, ooh, do I really want to go through the trouble or like take the next steps to, take that next step with PWA being part of your user experience, what are some of the business benefits that people need to consider that we haven't already touched on yet?
Yeah, so as you all probably know, Google is changing their algorithms quite crazy recently. And my assumption is because they are pushing PWA and they are pushing companies to create better web experiences, one of the main factors is the speed, so the loading times of your site. The PWA is using service workers. Service workers are allowing you to create much better caching strategy, and caching strategies and the way you cache your site is having a huge impact on performance. And this can bring you much better Lighthouse scores, which will, for example, boost your SEO, right? So you will have much better results in organic search. So more users to your site, better experience, better conversions. On average, we see that after the PWA is implemented, the revenue uplift is somewhere between 15 to even 40%, depending on how bad your website was before.
Wow,
so I would say, that the revenue is quite a big motivation here. And this is like all of the steps. This is where the goal is, right? For any e-commerce business to generate better revenues.
For sure. And just touching on the speeds and things like that. If you're waiting for that loading window, you get bored within 3 seconds. You want to hop off, and 3 seconds is even generous, at least for me, to be willing to wait for something. You hop on somewhere else, you scroll somewhere else on YouTube or Google or find another website, and then that's it.
Exactly. And recently Google, besides the speed, they also said that they will be looking at the UI of the sites, right? So I mean, why Google should recommend to anyone by searching for a product, e-commerce site that is displaying this product in a really terrible way, right? What's the point? Then users would be dissatisfied with the Google search because, hey, Google, what are you showing me? Like, I can't buy anything from that site. It's so ugly. So Google, again, changed algorithms. Okay, fine. Let's make our users happy. So now you e-commerce owners should also think of how to make your users happy by implementing a much better UI and therefore user experiences.
Definitely. And for the time we have now, I want to encourage you watching here to type any questions you have, and we'll do our best to get to them. So while you're doing that, I want to ask you, Patrick, so if there's one thing that you want people to really take away from this session, what is that?
I think the most important is that PWA will be a standard sooner or later. And I think the sooner you will do it, the more competitive advantage you will get and the more market share you can gain. Because we have this, early adopters, majority, and so on. We have a lot of great companies like, Zadig and Voltaire, for example, Tallyway, so a lot of big enterprises already using Vue Storefront. And we can see this trend is moving forward very fast. And if you will be the last ones to implement this, you will not be able to, get this share of the cake if you do it early. So I think in that case, I would say it's very worth the risk.
Definitely. And I'm excited that we started this off with this session because it really just seems like that now's the time to jump on this, especially if you haven't already. And you might as well do it sooner than later. Like you said, if this is going to become the standard, why not do it now, make the investment now, and start making that ROI sooner than later?
Exactly.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, Patrick. We really appreciate you. Jam-packed a lot of information. Everyone here in the session, make sure you copy and paste those URLs that he shared with you so that way you can line up and look at that when you're sharing all this information with your teams. Thank you so much. And for anyone who wants to connect with Patrick, you have a virtual booth, right? So that people can connect with you more?
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all again. Make sure to hop out of the session into the next one. We'll be covering vendor product onboarding with Charles Nicholson. So you don't want to miss that. Thank you all again. And I will see you in just a few.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.